If the Kemetic people weren't African, then what were they? It's profound peace and blessings. This is Derric RauKhu more. And in this video, I want to talk about, hey, if the Kemetic people were not black, then what were they? All right? That's the question I'm putting out. Part of the reason why I'm putting this out there is because, like I said, I've gotten some comments, some unbelievable comments, all right? And some, so we want to address that. We want to talk about that. I'm gonna put it out there, and hopefully this clears the air, okay? But before I do that, before I actually go ahead and I talk about the subject at hand, I want to actually share a story with you. As most of you know, I teach mathematics. As I revealed in my first book, my Ankh Volume 1, I originally went to school for engineering. Went to school to be an engineer, been set on being an engineer and everything. But every time I got into that technical field, every time I got pulled or tried to go back into engineering, try to get into anything dealing with any of that, there was always something that derailed me. There was always something that, it was always some kind of mishap. There was an accident, there was some health issue. There was always something that always pulled me back into dealing with mathematics, all right? And it wasn't until, and I've been studying this, I've been studying Kemetic spirituality for a while, but it never dawned on me until I actually surrendered and submitted to the fact that mathematics is part of my calling, that I got a knack for teaching math. It wasn't until I went ahead and I accepted that and surrendered to that I started realizing, like I said, I got a knack for teaching math. I enjoy math. I enjoy the subject of it. All right. As I mentioned in the previous videos, or a couple of videos ago, I had just finished another 2 more math classes that I'm thinking like how I passed the math classes. All right. And taking 2 more math classes or so, leading up to that doctorates in mathematics. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't until I actually accepted it. It wasn't until I actually surrendered and I started learning that part of the reason why I have this knack for math, part of the reason why, I enjoy teaching it, I enjoy explaining it, I enjoy learning about it, I enjoy, the whole subject of it. Part of the reason why is because Jehuti, which is who the Greeks called Thoth, Jehuti governs my incarnation, governs my destiny. All right, that's my spiritual father in this lifetime. Jehuti is the one who oversees my life, oversees my destiny. Okay, so it wasn't until I started looking at that and I started accepting that and started realizing that this is the reason why I got this knack for it. All right. It was through mathematics I got a better understanding of divination systems. Divination, by the way, is governed by Jehuti. But it wasn't until I actually surrendered that this started making sense. When it comes to divination, I don't look at divination from the perspective that a lot of other people look at it from, which is, it's a fortune telling device. It's going to foretell your future. I don't look at it from that perspective. That's not even how I understood it. All right. I came to understand divination and finally agreed and accepted it and trusted divination through trial and error, but also through mathematics, is because I see it as a form of probability. Okay? Totally mathematics. Okay? So the whole thing about math, okay, that's my thing. All right. To the point of, understanding the math of everything, from the math or understanding the mathematical structures of a crystal or the mathematical structure of a snowflake. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to geek you out or anything. I'm just trying to explain and trying to let you know and try to help you to understand that when an individual has aligned themselves with a nature, with one of the Kemetic divinities, this is how it comes through. Okay. Now, let me, for the record, all right, I don't profess to be the master of mathematics. All right. I don't profess to be a know-it-all for that matter. Okay. But I can say that in this lifetime, that I am definitely an incarnation of my spiritual father, Jehuti. So it's not me who's teaching this. All right. Whenever a student comes to me and I'm explaining to them, hey, this is how you do this, and I get their attention, or I see I get students' attention, or I'm piquing students or individuals' interest from a mathematical perspective, it ain't me. I don't even fool myself like that. I know it's the spirit that is speaking through me, and it's speaking through me through Jehuti. Okay? I just know that's what's going on. All right? Now, like I said, I didn't used to always think like that. All right? It wasn't until, as I stated before, I surrendered, and after I surrendered and started understanding and accepting that this is part of my way, this is part of the ancestral way. It wasn't until I came into that I went ahead and I took that on, okay? And I became more proud of it. I became more interested in it and enjoying it, okay? Now, part of the reason why I'm telling you this story is because in lieu of that, I remember one time when I first started teaching, I remember my supervisor came to me, and my supervisor was like, hey, Derric, I need you to help this one student. I was like, okay, all right, what's the problem? And the supervisor was like, hey, this student, they've taken all these classes, all right? So they've taken all their core classes, everything that does not have to do with mathematics. They've taken all these classes. The only class they have not taken, or have not completed, is this one math class. And this math class is basically a prerequisite for them to actually take the other classes. But they gotta pass this class. If they don't pass this class, then they lose, scholarship. They lose their financial assistance. All right. So Derric is what my supervisor is saying. Derric, I need you to help this student. Okay. And I said, okay, all right. I said, no problem. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and let's get at it. Okay. So supervisor introduced me to the student, and right out the gate, I hate math. I can't do it. This is what the student says. And I was like, okay, all right. And this is not the first time I've heard this, all right? But I went ahead and I was like, okay, all right. Well, let's see what you're working with. Let's see what you got, Let's see what you need help with. Well, it doesn't matter, okay? I hate math, and I'll never get it. I'll never be able to do it. I'm like, okay. So after hearing this, I'm like, okay, well, apparently I'm not, I'm already hearing this student is they have what is called in education a fixed mind state. All right. They're the student was stuck. All right. So I was like, okay, all right. I said, well, let's try this. All right. So I wrote up on the whiteboard 1 + 1. I said, and I turned to the student. I was like, hey, 1 + 1 = what? And student, of course, they looked at me, looked at me like I was stupid. Looked at me as if I was like belittling them, And it was like, well, it's obvious, it's 2. I said, yeah. 1 plus 1 equals 2. I said, okay. I said, you know that. And it was like, yeah, everybody knows that. I said, okay, all right. I said, what if I replaced this 1 with an x? So then now the equation is x plus 1 equals 2. And the student looked at it. And I said, okay. I said, so what's x? And the student said, well, it's 1. I said, oh, okay. Well, I said, all right, well, how do you know that it's 1? And the student went ahead and said, well, it's obvious. There's only 1 plus 1 equals 2. It has to be. X has to be 1. I said, okay, all right. I said, that makes sense. I said, yeah. I said, how do you know that it's 1? And the student looked at me and, I could see I could pique their interest a little bit. And I said, let me show you how you know it's 1, okay? So I showed them the rules of algebra. I didn't go into all the properties and all that, but I just basically showed them n equals out. I said, whatever I do on one side of an equation, the algebraic equation, I have to do the exact same thing on the other side of the algebraic equation. So if I have a 1 here, I'm going to subtract a 1 on both sides in order to get my variable, which is the x, by itself. I'm going to draw my line. Then I'm going to put my x here. X equals 1. That's how we know that it's 1. So the student looked at it and was like, okay, all right, that makes sense. I said, okay, all right. I said, let's try this one then. X plus 2 equals 5. So I write x plus 2 equals 5 on the board. And I said, I'm going to use the same rules. Okay? I'm going to use the same rule. All right? Not going to change it. Same rule. So went ahead, subtracted 2 on both sides of the equal sign, drew my line, brought it down left to right, x equals 3. Okay? From the original equation of x plus 2 equals 5. So x equals 3. So the student went ahead and looked at it. And it was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I said, okay. I said, you try it. All right. And he was like, oh, no. I said, no. You're going to do the exact same problem. All right. So I erased my answer and I showed them. I went ahead and gave them x plus 2 equals 5. And I said, now you do it. So, of course, there was a little bit of hesitation, but I showed them. I said, okay, subtract 2 on both sides. Draw your line. Left to right, x equals 3. Okay, so they was like, okay, all right. So then I said, okay, let's erase it. Let's do it again. So I write up there x plus 2 equals 5. This time, the student went ahead and they wrote down, subtracted 2 on both sides, drew the line, left to right, x equals 3. I said, all right, good deal. You got it, all right? Let's erase it. Let's do it again. So again, write down the same problem. The student went ahead, they did it just the way I taught them. They drew their line, they found out x equals 3. And the student basically, after they did it that third time, erased it again. And then I said, do it again, all right? And I think the student did it probably about 7 to 10 times or so. That same problem, okay? And we stopped because it was like, okay, you can see it was basically wearing on them. And it got to the point, the student's like, hey, I already know the answer is going to be x equals 3. I already know that's the answer. I said, you're right. It's going to be x equals 3. I said, so let's try this one. So I erased the problem and I wrote down x plus 4 equals 12. I said, solve that one. And at first the student looked at me and I said, no. I said, you can do it. Use the same rules that I taught you. Okay? So the student looked at the problem. You can see them thinking about it. Part of them didn't want to do it. They're fighting with themselves. But the problem is x plus 4 equals 12. So they subtract a negative 4 on both sides of the equal sign. draw their line to get x equals 8. And they turned around, they looked at me, and they asked that same question that all students ask. Is it right? And I said, guess what? You just did an algebra problem. And I'll never forget, the look on the student's face was priceless. They were in total shock because they had been telling themselves all this time that they couldn't do it. And they just did an algebra problem all by themselves. Okay? So, after they went ahead and they looked, and I mean, like I said, it was priceless. I'll never forget how that student looked, because they were just in total awe that they actually did an algebra problem. I mean, it geeked them out. But what they did afterwards was a little bit more memorable. After the student realized that they did it, they was like, hey, they got it. And they was like, and they shook their head. It was like, okay, thank you. The student left and never returned. And the next time I saw that student, the student was saying, I can't do math. I can't do algebra. Okay? Now, part of the reason why I'm sharing that story with you is because we got some people that it doesn't matter how many facts we present, how much truth we talk about. Doesn't matter what the documents, what kind of data you present, anything in regards to the Kemetic people, they're going to say the same thing. I don't see it. I don't understand. I don't agree. The Kemetic people were not black. It doesn't matter what is said. I have listed YouTube links of actual professors, instructors. I've listed books. I've given all other kind of references. But instead, we still get these same people, like this student. Instead of them going ahead and accepting the fact that this is what it is and realizing, hey, you can improve your life this way, they choose to go the other way. They have a fixed mind state because they've been told, or they have read, or they just can't believe. Whatever the case is, they do not believe that the Kemetic people were black or brown-skinned Africans. So that's where they're at. Okay? Now, part of the reason for going ahead and also sharing that story is because just like that student was not able to further improve their life, because, by the way, the student ended up dropping out, all because they could not pass a math class. All right? Just like that student was not able to further improve their life because really they couldn't get their ego out the way. It's the same way these individuals who keep saying the Kemetic people are not black, or they're not black and brown skinned Africans, the same people, they're not able to improve their life that same way. Okay? Now, I started off by telling you about my whole influence and my whole interest in mathematics and everything, because I was saying, and I'm trying to show you, this was my cultural understanding of doing things. Okay? Unlike some people who want to just basically focus on the skin tone, all right? I've stated, and you go back and you can watch any of the videos, I've stated the Kemetic people were black, they were Africans, based upon cultural comparisons, okay? Based upon cultural comparisons. Their culture is more similar to African, black and brown skinned African people. And the reason why I shared my story with you in regards to Jehuti is to show you that was my cultural comparison. Okay? You don't hear a whole lot of people talking about Jehuti or Thoth and saying, oh, well, it was, Jehuti or Thoth went ahead and they basically helped me to deal with mathematics and any of that. You don't hear people talking about that. Most people who talk about this, most people who talk about Kemetic spirituality, and they talk, hey, I'm all about the gods and this and that and the other, they do it from a magical perspective. And really, to be honest with you, it's from a cultural appropriation perspective. Okay? That's not what I presented to you. I showed you, or basically revealed to you, my cultural connection, okay, with the Kemetic people, with Jehuti, based upon that cultural comparison. Okay? So when I told you, hey, it took a while for me to even align myself with Jehuti, that, hey, guess what? Jehuti is my patron. Jehuti is my spiritual father. You didn't hear anything about me saying, me doing it from a magical perspective or any of this other stuff, the way you hear all these other people who claim to be, I don't want to say claim, but these people who say they're all about Kemetic spirituality. You didn't hear that, okay? The reason why you didn't hear it is because, as I stated before, we're talking about a cultural comparison. In other words, Kemetic spirituality is my culture. Okay? Kemetic spirituality is my ancestral culture. That's the reason why you don't hear me appropriating it like others do, by saying, oh, I did this and I did this and I worked with it from this perspective. You don't hear that as you hear a lot of Westerners say. Now, I'm not trying to throw any shade on anybody who says that, they practice Kemetic spirituality or they don't or any of that. I'm not trying to do any of that, okay? What I am trying to set the record straight is, or what I'm trying to do is basically set the record straight here and let you understand, all you people who keep talking about what the Kemetic people are not, the Kemetic people are not black, the Kemetic people are not this and that and the other, okay, your ego's in the way. And just like that student was not able to improve their life with any of this wisdom, okay, with any of that wisdom regarding what I just showed them in regards to solving a math problem so that they can pass their math class, you're not able to grow and improve your life with any of the Kemetic wisdom because your ego is in the way trying to prove that the Kemetic people were not black and brown skinned Africans. That's what's going on. Okay? Now, I'm going to do you one better. There's a book that I've been waiting. I've been looking for this book for the longest time. And I finally went ahead and found it. And it's called An X-Ray Atlas of the Royal Mummies. And in this book, it reveals, based upon dental remains, X-ray of dental remains, the Kemetic people were black and brown skinned Africans. That's what it reveals. It reveals that there's another group of people that were also, that some of the Kemetic royals were a part of. And I say some, not all, but some of the Kemetic royals, all right? And these Kemetic royals, they were not African, okay? They come from a European line. Now, because we're talking about this whole discussion of are the Kemetic people, were they black or were they black or are black people or who were they or what were they? Because we got this conversation going on, in this book, it reveals that these people apparently, like I said, they come from a European, probably a European influence or Western influence, Eurasian, hereditary, line. Okay. But that makes you wonder, where did that come from? Okay. If you got these, some of these kings, some of these royals, they're not African, but they're from maybe, like I said, from Europe or so. Where did they come from? Well, speculation leads us to believe that they are the descendants of the Hyksos. If you don't know who the Hyksos are, you need to go ahead, do the research for those individuals who can't prove or who are so interested in trying to prove that the Kemetic people were not black and brown skinned Africans. Okay? The Hyksos people are those foreigners that came into Kemet and ruled for about 100 or so years until they got kicked out. They're the people who basically came in and didn't offer a whole lot of, advancement. It was basically a lot of war. They was very aggressive, very war-like people, but that was it. These are the same people that basically, after the Kemetic people kicked them out, all of a sudden you see the story of Osir, or the Osirian religion, really galvanize, because these were also followers of Set. Okay? So, who were the Kemetic people? If the Kemetic people weren't black, what were they? Do we really want to go down there? Do we really want to keep going down that road? Okay? Because as I stated before, we already know majority of the people, the Kemetic people, were black and brown skinned Africans. The indigenous people were black and brown skinned Africans. All right? Their culture was similar to the culture of other indigenous traditional African people, because after all, Kemet is in the continent of Africa. All right? So, I just wanted to share that with you. I wanted you to see that. I wanted you to kind of get a better understanding of this. And again, I will list that book, list it in the comment section, okay, so that you can go ahead and you can read it yourself. And I already know what's going to happen, because if you're still stuck in that mindset, if you still have that fixed mindset, it's not going to make any matter. It's not going to make any difference if, I go ahead and present the information and present references or not. Okay? But understand what I'm saying here. If you do not get your ego out the way, your life is not going to improve using this wisdom. Okay? You got to get your ego out the way. All right? So, hopefully that helped. If you got any questions or comments, feel free again. Drop me a line. Until next time. I'm sorry. Thanks again for sharing, liking, and subscribing. Okay? Until next time. Hetepu. Peace.
Just take it on to the house. Come on.